Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's starting to join. I'll give it a few minutes to get everyone inside the room. Hope you all well. It's quite quiet here. I think we'll be using Slido later so we can interact a little bit. You can ask some questions and send your comments over. But yeah, like I said, we'll get started in about a minute or two. Okay. I'm starting to see some comments, which is really nice too. I think, especially from my side as a workshop host, it's really nice to see interaction from other people, even if it's limited. So let's see, maybe we can do a soft start. So let's see, where are we now? So yes, thank you everyone for attending this Introduction to User Research workshop. This is the first one of Hack the North and super excited to be here today. Like I said, I will be hosting this workshop. My name is Joanne. We also have Leon, who's a workshop in the background helping out with some comments and different things as well, which is really nice. So I guess we can just get started then. I guess you're all here today because you wanted to hear a little bit about user research. So who am I? My name is Joanne. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a UX designer. I'm currently based in Sweden. I did actually study math and business at Waterloo and Laurier. I graduated in 2014, and I was also a Hack the North organizer back then as well. So it's really nice to be back and be able to participate in some way, even if it's virtually. And in my free time, I enjoy doing other activities such as bouldering, watercolor, and chess. But I also want to know a little bit about everyone on the other side. So I would like everyone to, we have Slido open and understand a little bit about who you are on the other side here. So let's see. If you're not familiar with Slido, what you can do is use your phone or your computer and go to slido.com. And then you'll be requested to type in a code 642860. And we will start with a little mini icebreaker to understand who you guys are. So I want to know who's on the other end here, because right now this is not necessarily the same thing as, I guess, if there was a real in-person talk, which I wouldn't have been able to go to. So I'm happy that this is a possibility, but I'd love to see what other people are doing. Who are you? Are you students, high school students? What are you studying? It's a bit limited what you can give, but I'd love to hear your results anyways. So let's see. I will try this out. If everyone can go to slido.com, and I think there should be some sort of icebreaker question that just says, what do you do? Very generic. You can interpret it as you wish and see where we are. Oh, okay. Super cool. And I purposely kept it a bit open as well, just so I didn't box you guys all into like just students. Lots of students. Nice. Oh, okay. Lots of students here. Cool. I think you're also able to give, I don't know, what grade you're in, your programs potentially. I studied personally math and business, which is not I guess, directly related to UX design, but I know there's a lot of different people working on different things. So cool. Really cool to start seeing these answers come in. I know it takes a little bit of time to get this in. So I'm going to give it a minute because I think this is super interesting. And this is like my opportunity to see the other side. It's unfortunate I don't get to see the faces, but happy to be here. Lots of people at Waterloo. It would have been interesting to get some, I guess, there might be stats later on as well. But lots of different things going on here. So I'm going to actually give it another minute because I think this is worth it, at least from my end. You'll also see with Slido, you're able to put in questions and share anything. So throughout this whole talk, if you feel that there's some questions you want answered, feel free to ask them and I'll try to adjust them as they come. But if otherwise, you can always reach out to me afterwards as well. Okay, I'm super surprised. Really happy to see high school students here as well. Lots of different people come in lots of directions. So, okay, really good for me to see. And the next question was, how familiar were you from user research? A lot of you said slightly. Some people not at all. Some people married. Okay, this is interesting from my end. And then the last question, I guess, was just trying to understand. Oh, here we go. More going on here. What is the most important for everyone else today? We'll be covering all of these, but wanted to see what kind of ranks in terms of interest. So the list of methods, tools, what it is, and then, yeah, we will do a workshop exercise as well. So I will keep this slide open so you can see that there are some questions going on. Feel free to, yeah, continue asking questions. Appreciate this comment. That's very nice considering I have been quite afraid of my own voice for a long time. But thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself. I'm more than happy to interact with you guys afterwards outside of this workshop as well. So really happy to get that points there. So what are we doing today? We're going to be going through an introduction of course, this is the topic of the workshop of user research. A few steps in getting started. What do you do after you do user research? Getting some next steps. And of course, as some people mentioned, some of the toolbox and things that you can use, hopefully even next week, but onwards as well. And then a short little workshop exercise based on some of the things that we've discussed today. So like I said, keep those questions if there's anything coming up, and we can address them at the end as well. So what is user research and why is it important and why should we care? Well, we want to build products in general that are relevant to users, easy to use, and provide a return on investment. And what I'm saying is that user research can potentially be one of the answers to getting the answers to these questions, like what should we build? Can our users use what we build? And did we build the right thing? Depending on the phase of your product, you might use different methods, but there's a place for user research in many parts of the product development cycle. So you can think about the research landscape as one of two axes. So we have the attitudinal and behavioral here on the vertical y-axis, and the qualitative and quantitative on the x-axis. You might see in like other places, sometimes it's switched. That's not so important at this point. But what does that actually mean? We have attitudinal and behavioral. Attitudinal is the attitudes, like as you can see in the word. It's listening to what people say and listening to their expectations, beliefs, perceptions. These are things that they would say in terms of their beliefs, but this is not necessarily the same as what they do. And that's the other side, the behavioral side, the actions and interactions. And I mean, a lot of times these are quite aligned, but you'll see sometimes that it's not always the case. So for example, if you did like a survey to try to ask people, oh, would you buy this? That might actually be different for in the future when we actually count, like, would people actually buy this? So a lot of times it's good to be using these in conjunction, and that's the same thing with qualitative and the quantitative axis as well. So when I say qualitative, these are the maybe a little bit more fluffy sometimes, if at least compared to the quantitative. It's the subjective and descriptive data things that are a bit more open-ended, often observed directly with not as many people, but of course, you could also combine or do different methods as well to try to get the best data. And this answers questions like how and why and things that are more complex, and dives into the depth of things and to understand like reasons and motivations why interviews, those types of things are really good methods with qualitative reasoning. And then with quantitative, it's kind of the opposite. We have objective and measurable data, things that are a little bit more concrete. If you think of, for example, questions with very discrete answers, you don't like no room for lots of openness. And oftentimes this is more on, like you can see it quantitative, you're trying to get a lot of data and generalized findings as opposed to getting into the nitty gritty of like the particular whys and hows of a specific person. So how do you actually do user research? What do you have to think about? What are those, like we have the two landscapes, but what does that actually mean? So I would say that in order to do successful user research, you have to think about a few things. That's asking the right questions, using the right methods and tools, recruiting the right participants, and recognizing and avoiding bias. And of course, these are super, like much easier said than done. When I say asking the right questions, it's like, what are you trying to learn? Making sure that you're asking questions in a way that aren't leading, making sure that you have the right base so that you're not getting stuck. I have some examples later as well. Using the right tools. So certain methods and tools may have like constraints or limitations, things that you need to consider. And I mean, if you use the wrong methods and tool, you end up potentially getting like erroneous or uncertain conclusions and results. Recruiting the right participants, also very crucial. I think if you research or recruit the wrong people, especially those who are not representative of the target, you might also get learnings that aren't relied on. And of course, you have to think about making sure you recognize your biases. As I mean, everyone as humans, we have them. They're like mental shortcuts that help us in our day-to-day lives, but at the same time, sometimes they don't help us. So making sure we're aware of those. And when I say asking the right questions, here's what I meant with the examples. You can see on the left side of this table, there's a lot of potential questions you could be asking. And depending on the question, the potential methods or ways to try to find those answers may differ. And you can even see, like, if you look at the last three questions here, they're worded quite similarly. Like, do users want to use our products? Can they use our products? Do our users use our product? And they're quite similar, but if you look at this table here, the way you might get those answers can differ quite a lot. So being very clear about what you're trying to find out is quite important. And I mean, do users want to use our products? That's very like trying to get opinions as opposed to like the actual very behavioral, like, are they using our products? So using the right methods is super important for that. And yeah, continuing on to that topic, lots to consider when you're using different methods and tools. I use methods as more like the general term, and tools is more from a software, how do you actually execute on this? But I know sometimes they can be used a little interchangeably if you search this up on the internet. So just so you know what I mean when I say this. And these will depend on where you are in the development process. If you're a little bit more in the earlier stages, maybe you're more open and you're trying to explore different things, then you have different tools that are maybe more qualitative as opposed to if you already built a product and you're measuring and trying to evaluate it, then maybe it's more quantitative or trying to get more behavioral there. So thinking about like the slide before, what kind of questions do you have, and the tools you choose might depend on that, and trying to get the best quality of data, which is very difficult. But of course, you need to get the right data to make conclusions on. And of course, the resources that you have, like time, money, and knowledge. You know, it does take time a lot of times to execute on certain methods, and some tools cost a lot of money. So what I tried to do is at least try to share tools that maybe are more open source or free, or accessible. So at least in this case, but there's a world of different tools available out there. And sometimes it does require a little bit of knowledge in terms of some things are a bit more technical, or the way you actually, ask questions. You need to have, you need to know what biases you have, and you need to know certain methods, so that can happen as well. And I think when it when it comes to recruiting the right participants, I think this one is probably the one that's like the most easiest said than done. It is really hard, I think, to find the right people to recruit for user research. And I think even those who are working as like full-time user researchers, there's a lot of different articles and different ways to find the right people. I mean, if you do have some sort of tools that help you with recruitment, it can be helpful to screen sometimes to get the representation that you want. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, if you're asking the wrong people, you might get answers. And I mean, I think this comment is a little bit cheeky, but it is very true, where results really can be skewed if you're not getting the right people to include. And speaking of including and inclusion, like you always have to actually think about who you're recruiting as well. I mean, we've heard of so many examples where maybe it wasn't intentional, but if you're forgetting to intentionally include, then you are actually unintentionally excluding. So thinking about how to include different voices, perspectives, to make sure that the products you build are inclusive, and especially if you're making a lot of things that are not very niche, but like it's for everybody, we should be building and considering for that. And yes, this takes a lot of time, so make time for it. I do recognize that, if you're doing, for example, just a hacking project, it might be very difficult to do like a full-scale study. There are lots of different ways. And I mean, for myself, I've done a lot of ad hoc recruitment and research, I would say, that does work. Like, if you're using your own networks, if you're looking on forums, I think one of the best ways is to be where your target audience is. So, I mean, sometimes there's Facebook groups where other people, I don't know, Facebook groups for people with pets or whatever the case is, or whoever you're looking for, to try to not just go through your friends and your friends of friends and try and actually get that broader experience. So, and people are actually quite open to talk. I mean, sometimes it's helpful to have some sort of incentives, but I understand that that's not always possible. But it could just be like, $5 Tim Hortons gift card or a Starbucks gift card here and there for some things. But I think one thing that I guess a lot of you guys who are listening right now, your student status is super, super nice. A lot of people are quite open to helping out students who are learning, and students who are, really willing to learn, and quite open about that, as opposed to, if you're working somewhere. So I would say you should leverage your student status if you can. Are there methods we can use to systematically account for biases? I mean, there are things, I'll go through a few methods later, but just as off the top of my head, for like surveys, which is, I mean, maybe a very basic user research method, there are like screeners that you can use to say that I want specifically this many people from this area, or and I think, sometimes it's a bit sensitive talking about like the different areas you can be thinking about, like diversity and inclusion, like race, ethnicity, age, ability, sexual orientation, religion. But you have to kind of think about it. You can't just ignore it, because those that they do exist. And if you just say, it's fine, like we'll just see whatever comes out, it ends up being that bias there. But yes, this is tough. There's a lot of really good resources out there as well. I think I've included some links at the end that you can check out as well. This is a pretty big topic, as you can imagine. And then also kind of related to that as well, that we are humans, and that means we have cognitive biases. It's the tendency to do that mental shortcut so that, I mean, we have our brains from like the savannah where, that a lot of things are not quite relevant today. I mean, we had it before for our survival, but the world we live in today is very different from thousands of years ago. So, I mean, I can give a few examples. If you've heard of confirmation bias, it's a tendency to focus on information that aligns with your expectations. And this is kind of what the little image here shows, that, maybe you'll only listen to the stuff that aligns with what you already believe in. And this can be quite dangerous when you're doing user research, because then you're seeking out things that, validate what you're looking for, as opposed to trying to be a bit more objective and thinking about it from a bigger picture, as opposed to going in thinking you're looking for the answers. Depending on, and kind of similar, how you get results, there's a thing called framing effect, where you can potentially reach different conclusions depending on how you frame your research. So if you say, for example, in this website, 4 out of 20 people weren't able to do this, find this page, as opposed to, 16 out of 20 people were able to. The way you frame certain things, those were the same data points, could affect how other people see the data. There's also the, like if you're doing interviews or if you're observing somebody, people tend to try to be more socially acceptable when they're like talking to you. So they might be friendlier, or they might try to, I guess, the fact that you're just there, you're the observer, might change the way that they would have done if you weren't there. So just keeping these little things in mind are helpful when you're out in the field or doing research. And I mean, it's helpful to just learn about what different cognitive biases you have. You have a lot, I have a lot. There's this one sheet, this is a bit overwhelming, I'm sorry. But there's this, I think this is really neat. There's this cognitive bias codex that you can find. It just links to a lot of different cognitive biases you have in Wikipedia. I have definitely not gone through everything here, but I think sometimes it's a fun little read to just see how much I can't trust my brain. Be aware of your assumptions and be open to test questioning them. Like, why do you think that way? Is it because you've seen data, or is it because you kind of already believed it? And planning out how you ask questions in advance, especially if you have some sort of like script that you're following, just take a look at it and make sure that, and maybe have other people look at it as well to make sure you're not feeding the answers to get what you're trying to listen to. And then in general, just stay safe, talk less and listen, especially when you're doing research, because then you can, you're putting yourself outside of that equation and trying to affect it as little as possible. All right. So that's like, okay, say you've done all that and then you've done research. What do you do with that? Then you have to analyze the data. And I mean, if you've done all that work of recruiting different people, planning everything out, then at the end of that, you're probably going to have a lot of data and information. And so what you need to do is spend time to analyze that data. It might be a bit messy, but nowadays there's a lot of really good tools for like organizing different things. And so, for example, just some, I guess, basic steps is just organizing and collecting all that information, putting it in like one easy place to access, mining everything. So you look through all the data, looking through all the findings, quotes, anything that's helpful or interesting. Sorting and clustering in terms of finding any groupings or patterns that have come up based on the way you just reframed that information, and then identifying insights and looking at what's actually important and what to share. So after that, you would have to share your learnings, and who do you like? The point of doing user research is actually to have something come out of it. So either learnings that directly affect your products, updated stories to work on, or knowing the next step to research as well. That could be something that you get from it. And there's a lot of places where like companies have pivoted from knowledge in terms of knowing what's next. So this can save a lot of time as opposed to like building a product and then learning something. And yeah, of course, sharing with your teams or other people who are interested. I think in the context of a hackathon, I think obviously it's your hacker team, and it would be much more of a faster version of than like if you were like a dedicated user researcher in a company working in much longer terms. But what I think most of you were interested in was having some sort of toolbox of what's available to you. There are a lot of methods and a lot of tools out there. I definitely will not try to go through everything, but I figured what I could do is just list a few of them, and then if there's something that looks interesting, you can go out and look it up a little bit more on your own. So there is A/B testing. You can see on each of these screens, what I'll have is like a little table on the left where it kind of belongs in the research landscape between the two axes. And then here are some tools that can be used. Some of them cost, but I did try to find ones that are a bit more accessible. With A/B testing, it's a little bit more, I would say, less accessible in a very short time period because it requires it's kind of further in the process in terms of being quite evaluative, and you have something there and you need to be able to have a statistically significant amount of results for it to show those results. But I can at least describe it. And what it is you have an experiment where you have two versions, or if you have more than two versions, you can do multivariate testing. And it's shown randomly at the same time to two different groups of people. And you can see what performs better. And this is good if you're like not quite sure, you don't want to push something into production just because you're going on a hunch. You want to actually know that something actually does perform better. And with this way, you can actually see that something did. And I mean, all the really, if you think of the super big consumer products, they all do A/B testing in some way. So quite interesting. Like I said, maybe difficult in the span of really short time. And quite similarly as well, we have analytics also on the more behavioral, so what people are actually doing and getting enough data so that it's more quantitative. This is, same idea. I mean, everyone's heard of just Google Analytics in the beginning, but if you, and getting those things set up can be quite quick. But again, it does take some time for the data to trickle in. But very good to have as well. I'll try to skip over some of them that I guess are not as easy to, I guess, make happen in the span of like a weekend. But I think they're also good to have for your own knowledge and looking into them later as well. Heat mapping, also following the same quadrant of quantitative behavioral. It's pretty much a visualized version, like a visualization of the of like analytics, where you can see based on a color spectrum, how, like, what buttons are being clicked, what people are not so much what people are looking on. That's more like eye tracking, but in this case, you can measure what people are actually clicking. And I have a tip that I think it was that I did at least, and it was setting up something like Hotjar or some sort of heat mapping tool onto, for example, your website. If you have like a portfolio or some sort of site where you're interested in what other people think. I remember I set this up on my own personal website when I was looking for jobs. And it was really interesting to see where people were coming from, but you also got playbacks of how people are scrolling through your website. And I mean, I use Hotjar, but there's other tools as well. I think a lot of them have either freemium models or different ways to check. And like I said, it helps you to see what people are clicking, what people are scrolling away. But for product building, it's also helpful as well to see where you're at there. Card sorting is a method where you get your participants to organize information that makes sense for them. You can do it in two ways. You can have it open where they're the ones creating the labels, or you can have it as you already have predefined categories and you want your users to try to put them in what makes sense to them. There are a lot of digital tools, but you could also do this in a physical context as well. And I think this is really helpful for things like I mean, anything with a menu structure is a very obvious use case for it. Like if you're trying to see how people can think about how information is structured, if you have like an app and you're trying to figure out what to name the labels and what to put in those, this could be a good way to get that information, as opposed to just, you just guessing yourself. The next one, depending on the context, I think it can be quite helpful. This is one of my favorite ones, just from like I guess, user, I don't know, experience perspective. And it's just doing field study and being where your participants or users are at. Really good for early stages when you're trying to just be a bit more open and learn about a different environment. Really helpful, especially if you're creating products that are in a very different environment than you are. And this is the one that you should be a bit careful that they are, maybe not doing 100% what they would do, even if you weren't in that place. I remember this is one of my favorite, I guess, job moments where I was on this ship in the middle of nowhere pretty much. And it was super interesting to see how different that environment was from the environment I'm used to. So like they didn't have Wi-Fi and they, and just, the sounds and the things that I guess that they, like your users sometimes, one really good thing about field study and observations are that there are things that are really interesting insights for you, but then it's so mundane and everyday for the users or participants that they wouldn't think to tell you. But then if you're there and you can see it, you can ask about it and learn more about it. So this one just takes a lot more, I guess, prepping in advance and trying to figure out what is it that you're trying to learn, and a lot of more logistics things, depending on what it is. But in the context of, a hackathon or something, if you're building something for hackers, you're already in that environment, or like a virtual, like, I guess it's not quite, it's more of a physical thing, but you can observe, I guess, in the context sort of someone else, like how I think Netflix, for example, used to like visit people's homes to see how they are actually using Netflix, as opposed to just doing video sharing and stuff. So very interesting there. Interviews, I think this is something that we know about, but I think sometimes getting it right is hard. Even I think, trying to get the right questions, getting the right people to be on the other side is potentially quite difficult. This one I think is nice to, the types of questions you ask can be just quite open, the hows and the whys, as opposed to do you or do you not, like avoiding the yes or no questions and letting the person just share the information that they want. There's a lot of really interesting tools for conducting, especially on like digitally now. But one thing I've recently been really happy to have is also having things that can help assist you in interviews, such as like transcription tools. And I also learned that it's really helpful to have someone else be there with you, whether it's a note taker or someone who helps facilitate on the side. Very helpful there. And then survey it sounds, I guess, maybe more of one of the more not as exciting research topics, but can be quite informative in the type of information that you get. And I think nowadays there's a lot of different digital tools that are available there for you to collect that data. I think even, everyone's done a survey or done have done some sort of form or survey before. But yeah, making sure you ask the right question and making sure you ask questions so that, your answers cover 100% of the actual cases, or, you give an option to have the participants share their own answers. However, the more people that you have and the more like free text, that can account to a lot of analysis and like manual work as well. So trying to keep that in mind. And then we have usability tests. I think maybe you've heard, at least if you're in some sort of design context. And this is a way to test your product without having to code it end to end. It's just getting a clickable prototype there and faking a lot of the interactions. And you can actually get a lot of information by just having a clickable prototype. And I mean, there's a lot of tools out there today where you can make something quite quickly and get it out to test and see if other people can do the tasks that you've outlined. And that can save a lot of time, even if you're just testing out things like the copy or the text that you're using. This can be a very helpful thing. And I mean, this is one of the things where if you're doing a hackathon, very doable in a weekend. And also, this isn't something that you require. You don't need like 30, 40 people to be going through your prototype. I mean, as I think it's been said that, Jared Spool said like 5 people. If you get 5 people, you can actually get a lot of insights. And of course, the more you get, the better. But sometimes if you really want to just catch those really basic things, just testing it with 5 different people can be giving you a lot more information than, you just staring at your prototype and saying, okay, let's just build it. So yeah, that was a lot of just like methods and tools. You can see on this side here, like I only talked briefly about the ones here in black. There's other methods as well, but because this is an intro, I won't go deep into everything. It's more just like giving you a taste for some of the things that are out there, giving you an opportunity to just try some things on your own. But as a summary, in order to get the most out of user research, you should ask the right questions, use the right methods and tools, find the right participants, and of course, recognizing your own biases and trying to avoid them. And then once you've done your research, make time to analyze that data, as well as sharing learnings and make sure you can take action. So very quick crash course there. I can see in the slide, if there's any questions, we can take a look there. But otherwise, I would like to take the rest of the time to be a little more interactive and do a little bit of a workshop exercise. So I think we're going to try to send a link to the Hopin and the YouTube channel. And what we're going to do is bring us to a Mural board where we're going to try a little bit of the workshop that we have here. And let's see, give it some time here for questions / getting everyone to get in to this link here. I can see if I can share the link here as well. Oh, we're getting some visitors here. What this is a Mural board. If you're not familiar with Mural board, it's just another, it's an online whiteboard tool. We're going to be starting off on the left side. You can use your mouse and woohoo, everyone's getting in here. That's great. You can start scrolling a little bit. If we go all the way to the left side, what you can do is when you double click, a sticky note comes in. So I guess what we could do is everyone who comes in, if you're comfortable, you can put a sticky note and claim it with either your name, or it doesn't have to be your name. It can just be just so you have your own color sticky. So I'm going to put my initials here and have a sticky on the left side, just so we are all in one place here. And I'm just going to give a brief overview while everyone is coming into the workshop. Hopefully it won't be super chaotic. It'll be a little chaotic, but it's fine. What we're going to do is ideate some questions in terms of what do you want to learn from your users. And you can think a little broadly. You can think from the context of the hackathon, the Hack the North, what you want to be doing. You can think about, a project that you're working on. Anything goes. There's no wrong answers here, so don't worry about that. And then after we have the ideation, then we will go into the different steps here. So as an example, I'm going to, here's some questions that I had. And it was like, can our users use our products? is this or this better for conversion? What should we build? What are users willing to pay for? And so, yeah, everyone has made some stickies. That's good. And so now on the same board now, try to think of some questions that you want to learn from your users. I'll give it a few minutes. I think it's going to take some time for everyone to get used to things. But we're on to this first part here, question ideation. And what we're going to be doing is giving everyone some time to reflect and think a little bit about what kind of questions do you want to learn about from your users. I will put a timer and we'll give it, 3 minutes, and go ahead and start thinking of some questions you want to know from your users. And if you're stuck or you have some questions, feel free to just ask something on Slido. Try to answer those. You're able to have more than one question as well, so feel free to have as many or as little questions as you want. Some really interesting questions. I'm very curious to what kind of things you're working on. We'll give it another minute. Okay, it's starting to slow down. I think it's going to give us a nice little pling. There we go. All right. So now we're going to move on to the next step. If you take a look at the questions that you wrote down, what we're going to do now is think about whether this kind of question is about what they're doing or if it's something that they say and it's about behavior. So if you take your questions, just take the ones that you wrote and move them over to the next side where we think about if it's a behavioral question, something that they're doing, you put it on the top side. If it's something that they say and something that they have an opinion about and a perception, then you put it on the bottom side. And now I'll give it like a minute or two for that as well. Thinking about where does that belong. And then if you're stuck, I have some examples here just to help you think about some types of questions to benchmark against. And then it's okay if some things don't really fit in. If they're like more general questions, we can either address them later. That's maybe not about a product, or if it's more about user research in general, we can also take that later. All right, we're starting to finish off here, which is good. I think I saw a question before in terms of how did we find this product, maybe? Yeah. Right now I'm using Mural. I actually like maybe some of the other digital whiteboards more, like Miro, but this one's really good because it allows people who don't need to sign up for accounts to join in anytime with a public link. Also free, like this is also a free tool, which I think is also good as well for people who are, if you're just trying to play around and have a digital whiteboard, Mural is good for that, as well as I think Miro, you can have a few boards for free, which is good. Okay, I think we are finishing up on this side, which is great. We're going to see if we can manage here as well. There we go. So I'm going to now, now you're going to move everything to the next side. Keep it on this, like if it's on the top side now, keep it on the top side. If it's on the bottom side, keep it on the bottom. But now we're thinking about whether this is a qualitative question or a quantitative question. So are you trying to figure out, the why, the how, like how did they do this? Or is it more about the numbers of what, where, or like when, how many? As an example, I will just put a few here to help us think about what that might look like. Maybe it's a bit messy. So you can either copy and paste or move over the sticky note. So make sure you keep, if it was on the top side, to keep it on the top and just move it between left and right. I hope that's not super confusing. And then if it's on the bottom, keep it on the bottom and just try to decide whether this is more qualitative or quantitative. I think you guys are getting the gist of this quite quickly, which is nice. Okay, so I don't even think we need so much of a timer here. All right, then I guess we can move over to the next step. The next step is not really, you don't have to do so much. So I'm going to, if everything is okay, copy over everything and hope this works. There we go. Here you go. And in theory, if we look over to the right side, you can, this is not like a perfect science, but what you could do is map out which quadrant your question is on and map out what are some of the potential methods to get those answers. And I mean, of course, it's a very basic exercise, but the idea is to help you, think about how the way you've worded the question, how can you actually find out how you answer this. So for example, this one, how often do users use our product? If you actually want to know something very behavioral about them and quantitative, then it's about actually setting up some sort of analytics tool and counting that up to get that like more general, I guess, source on it. And then, something like this, what is the biggest challenge the user is looking to overcome with the new product? That's a very, you're getting something it's more about digging deeper into the insights of a user. So it might make more sense to, talk to the user and like, do a test and see like where are they struggling with those types of things. And of course, all these tools here they're just some of the methods. Some things more exist more. Users research is a really big topic. So in today's session, we really just barely touched the surface, But on the next page here, I have a few links that I think could be potentially helpful. There's a lot of resources out there, but I've collected at least just some of them that might be helpful to help you ask the right questions, which methods to use. If you look at this, there's this one user interviews tool here, and you can see that, I mean, this is just one of the tools, but how pretty much overwhelming the user research tools landscape can be. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of tools. Some cost, some don't. So don't let that be a barrier to getting started. I mean, if you're doing an interview with somebody, if you're doing some quick prototype tests, you're doing your research. So yeah, that's about all I had for the workshop. Really happy everyone was able to join in and yeah, participate. If you guys want to chat with me more, I'll be on the Discord sign, but you can always contact me as well. Like you have my, I think from the Hack Pack, you can always email me or just message me. I'm more than happy to talk more. So thank you everyone for the workshop. If there's any other questions, feel free to add them in the Slido and I can address them. But otherwise, I think that's all I had for today. Best of luck to everyone for the rest of your hackathon and workshops and all the different things in school. So thanks for tuning in today and hope you guys got something out of this. Have a good one. Take care. Thank you.